Hello everyone, I hope that you are doing well. What's up, guys? I hope this day is a good day for you. I hope that you are having a good day, you're having a great day. If you are like around the UK, there's this Indian summer, which means that it's a little bit more warmer, it's a bit more hotter than normal time of the year. So hopefully you're enjoying that and hopefully you're doing well. We have been on this challenge, it's an intermittent fasting challenge for the past 30 days, and today we've hit day 22 out of 30, which means we have only 8 more days to go. And every single day we've been looking at different things, and today is not a different day because basically we will be looking at something slightly different. Have you ever heard of the term that your genes are the ones that load the gun, but it is the environment that actually pulls the trigger? This is something that is commonly used in public health nutrition. Most of the time people say that your genes are what it is. You are what you are because of your genetic makeup, and there isn't much that you can do to change your genetic makeup. But when it comes to some of the environment where you are in, that becomes the trigger that can actually make you have issues or overcome issues that you have a genetic predispositioning towards them. And one of the things that you can think about when you're thinking about this topic is things to do with the hair. People say that some people are genetically predisposed to have long hair. And so if you have the genes for long hair, you'll end up having this flawless long hair for a long time, that you enjoy those hair without any much effort. Whereas for some people genetically, they might struggle with having that long hair, but then there are things that can be done, for example, through your diet, what you eat and what you don't eat, and that can actually impact on your hair, etc. And so the same thing happens with our skin. If you try to think about it, somebody can say like, oh well, you have a good flawless skin because it's natural for you or genetically for you. And it's something that I know a couple of friends that will tell you, I don't wear makeup, I don't do anything, I do very minimal when it comes to my skin, but yet they have really this amazing flawless skin. And you wonder, why is it that these people tend to have a better skin than the other? And of course there is a contribution towards your genes, which do load the gun, but of course there is also another higher contribution to it, which is basically something that is impacted by your environment. And the environment or the lifestyle includes things like what you eat and what you don't eat. And so we have been looking at, if you're not eating or you're restricting the windows within which you eat, so you're controlling when you eat and when you stop eating, and looking at the impact of what that can have on your health. And today is no different, because we will be looking at the impact of what you eat and what you don't eat, particularly when it comes to your skin. Did I just talk about the word skin? Yes, of course, because we know that the skin is the largest organ of the human body. Your body is composed of quite a big chunk of it is the skin, and of course the skin plays an important role in terms of protecting your body from all the infections. Imagine if your body didn't have the skin, whenever you had any form of infection or an exposure to anything, that could actually bring issues to yourself. But because we have the skin, it's like a barrier that protects us, and it's like a barrier that actually brings that protection on the inside, kind of in a way. That's why it makes sense for our skins to be part of the largest part of our bodies. And so if you're looking at this skin, there are so many different things that are literally needed to keep your skin supple, to keep your skin okay. And one of those, of course, we know is the protein. And one of the important protein that it contributes quite a lot of things or factors towards your skin, the elasticity of the skin, etc., is what is called collagen. And so some people have actually suggested and said, if you want to stay looking younger for longer, or if you want to have a radiant skin, you may actually try to consider including collagen in your body. But then there are ways in which collagen synthesis can be impacted in any way. And the answer, or the simple answer to that question, is that yes, collagen is impacted by how much glucose you've got in your body. And so when you're trying to think about glucose, it's basically what you're eating, particularly the macros, which I mentioned before. This is your protein, your fat, and your carbohydrate, right? And carbohydrate, these are just basically sugars, and that's where you have your glucose. And so glucose plays an important role as a fuel, as a natural source of fuel for your body. Your body will generally love to break down the glucose into the energy that is needed, and that energy is going to power the different parts and the different functioning of the body. So when you go into fasting, we talked about this before, what happens is that sometimes you can end up having with the body changing its fuel. It changes the fuel, particularly from glucose. Once glucose is depleted, you've got those stored glycogen. Once that is depleted, you go into the body starting to break down the fat, and so you have things like ketosis happening. And through the process of ketosis, one of the things that happens is that the body begins to form what are called the ketone bodies, and these ketone bodies become the new source of fuel. And the new source of fuel can actually mean that you're harvesting a little bit more the things that are naturally stored in the body. And so when you're starting to regulate things like your glucose or your blood sugar levels, that just means at the end of the day you can end up in a way enhancing the functionality of your glucose, of your collagen, and that can actually result in some skin benefits. But of course, before I dig deeper into this, I want to mention something, that when it comes to the studies that have actually looked at all these importance factors and roles to do with the skin and how things like fasting and feeding affects the skin, there is so much that still need to be done there, but some of the research already shows quite some substantial amount of work, and that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit about today. So perhaps once you start to think about fasting, once you start to think about what happens to your body when it goes into fasting mode, I've already talked about the glucose, which is enhanced its functionality and things like that. But also think about fasting. One of the other things we talked about was autophagy, right? And when I think about autophagy, for me, it's like, for example, you have a garage, isn't it? You have some things that get stored in there. And when it gets to a point, you kind of like are cleaning out so that you get rid of all the old stuff that you don't need, so that eventually you can actually be able to bring in new stuff. And that's what happens to our bodies. Once we're constantly eating and eating and eating and eating, it gets to a point where we have all these old stuff that is still around the body. But once you're fasting and kind of in a way allowing our bodies not to introduce new food in the body, what happens is that the body begins to look for those stored or lost or damaged cells, and those cells can actually, in a sense, start either to be eliminated or removed from the body, or some of them can actually be repaired, and through that process of them being repaired can actually result in things like cellular activity being made better, and that's where some of these cells can repair themselves, which not only includes all the other parts of the body, but also the skin is part of the cells that are impacted in a sense. And so when you're thinking about this, I've talked about the autophagy as well, but generally when you're fasting, that's one of the things that I highly usually say, that when you're doing this journey, it is one of those important things to try and think about what are you replacing those lost meal times with. It is highly encouraged when you're not fasting, when you're not feeding, to try and increase your water intake. So if you're increasing your water intake, that means that you're drinking a little bit more water than the normal, generally what you will be drinking. And of course, what is happening is that during that time when you're fasting, the body is beginning, of course, to break down whatever that is not needed. And naturally, you get to a point that there will be those toxins that will be produced in the body. But you need to start flushing out those toxins, isn't it? You need a way in which you can start to kind of get rid of all those toxins. And drinking more water is one of those ways in which water in itself is hydration. Hydration is key. Of course, the more water we drink, you can easily see that. For example, I've mentioned before for myself, if I don't drink water, if I don't drink enough water, I tend to be like a little bit more puffy. I tend to be a little bit more like swollen and things like that. But the moment you start to drink more water, I feel a little bit more fresh. You can see my skin begins to glow a little bit more and more and more, and that actually in its sense does become a little bit better for me at the end of the day. And it's something that you might want to experiment with as well. So when you're trying to fast, for example, and instead of having these kind of just staying and waiting for longer, you can actually increase. And I've talked about also being careful to be sure that you're not increasing too much and not balancing out with your electrolytes, so that at the end of the day you end up into troubles with your sodium levels. But if you're kind of in a way balancing the amount of water that you're drinking, try to think about it in such a way that you are actually flushing out all those toxins, you are more hydrated, and what do you end up saying? That glow and things like that. I've got people asking me, Claire, could you do for us like something to talk to us about your skincare routine? And honestly, my skincare routine is very simple. I do very minimal things, as I mentioned before. I rarely wear makeup. I do it like occasionally, and it's very bare minimal because, of course, at the end of the day, I don't have the time to do that. But the thing that I've realized is that the moments that I'm doing fasting, for example, I tend to have more clearer skin. I tend to have more cleaner skin, simply because, again, as I mentioned, when you're not fasting, you're drinking more, and water is good for hydration. Water is good for your skin, but also you're eliminating the toxins when you're going to wee-wee and things like that, that actually basically can help you to flush out all those toxins. It helps you as well to flush out anything that can be in your body that is not needed to be there, and that can help you a lot when it comes to enhancing the health of your skin. But also when you're thinking about that more water that you're drinking, at the end of the fast as well, I tend to eat more healthy, as I've already talked about it. And if I'm eating more healthy, it just means that at the end of the day, I'm much more able to have like my fruits and vegetables. We know that the fruits and vegetables as well have a higher content of antioxidants. They help to fight all these like reactive oxygen species, and those can actually cause the body to go into things like oxidative stress. And of course, once you're doing that, you can basically enhance things like the skin health, but also things to do with longevity and aging. And then the next thing to think about as well when it comes to this whole concept of how fasting can actually help with the skin and aging, try to think about what you talked about with the gut health, right? The last time we talked about what fasting does to your gut. And so when you're trying to think about when you're giving your gut that time to kind of in a way rest, but also to get rid of all the stored nutrients in there that is not needed, basically when you have a healthy gut can actually result in a better functioning optimal body. And of course that improves as well things like your mood, it improves things like your sleeping, and of course all those resting and better mood, reduced stress, which is something you have again to work through, can actually help you as an individual when it comes to things like enhancing the skin, the condition and the health of your skin. And of course, not only is that related to the health of the skin, but also they can be related to things like longevity. And I wonder today, could it be that the secret that we are missing, or the key ingredient that we need for longevity, could actually be hidden in fasting? I've basically watched so many different people that have lived a longer life. I've basically watched the life of many people that have actually practiced like things like intermittent fasting as a lifestyle, and I've actually realized these people tend to have leaner bodies. And if they tend to have leaner bodies, of course, at the end of the day, it means that a leaner body can actually be able to kind of in a way avoid things like all these all these diseases. I've forgotten the name in a minute. And all these diseases such as like the cardiovascular diseases, all these non-communicable diseases. And if those non-communicable diseases are reduced in a sense, or their chances are reduced in a sense, that can actually result again in things like longevity. And if you're having longevity, or if you're living longer healthy life, maybe that will give us a better aging, rather than when we constantly are eating and eating and eating, which is not a bad thing again, as I've said. But when you're kind of giving yourself rest, you're actually giving your body the time and the energy that it needs to be able to repair itself, to be able to repair those functioning parts that have actually been damaged through just living, isn't it, just through life itself. And maybe once that damage does occur, over time you might end up having like better life, you might end up having like longevity, of course, and that of course can also impact on aging. And so just to bring this to summary, because I don't want this to be like something that is going to be long, is again to think about what happens to your body when you're fasting, what happens to your glucose supplies. Insulin sensitivity has been shown to be linked to so many different things, and insulin sensitivity can also impact the way the collagen is as well synthesized and things like that, but also the glucose itself, as I said in the at the beginning, things to do with when you're thinking about, like, again, autophagy, when you're thinking about things like your hydration levels, that can actually play a very significant role when it comes to the health of your skin. And as I've said myself, practically, I know these are things that I don't talk about just from reading around the books and things like that, which is amazing to read, but I know myself, you can check like over time when I haven't eaten, like maybe kind of in a way consciously taking some time off to kind of think when I'm eating, when I'm not eating, and things like that. The first thing that people will usually ask me is like, what's happened to your skin? And I'm like, nothing really, it's just my lifestyle. And I've realized there is so much gold in there. There's so much ways in which you can actually, the secret, keeping yourself looking younger, healthier for longer, could be hidden in fasting. But of course, as I said before, you try to kind of embark in this journey. Is something that you need to think about yourself. It's something that you might want to discuss again with somebody who understands your journey, a healthcare professional who understands as well, because these are things that, again, as I said, when it comes to research, so much is still being done on this area, but it's something that I'm talking from experience, and it might just be worthwhile thinking about it and feeling like, well, if I was to try it and see, does it work or does it not work? It's something, again, that might be worthwhile thinking about. I think I'll bring that to an end today. It's just like kind of a very quick summary of this, and I shall be back again tomorrow to talk a little bit about something else. Goodbye.